Hi, I'm Lee Shirley. I responded to a LinkedIn post from the Lighthouse charity regarding some conversations. And the conversation that I would like to share is about my journey with chronic illness, both in work and outside of work. So the Lighthouse charity have kindly forwarded some questions for me to answer to give some background as to the condition and what it's like to be a man and live with the chronic condition and those pressures that either we put ourselves under by what our version or expectations are of being a man in this world, and also what society or what we perceive society expects from us. So just a little bit of background first. I'm approaching my 59th birthday. I'm generally of a positive disposition and generally try to see the good in everything that's around us and derive value from that. And I think that that's come about from the experiences that I've had in my life. I'm fortunate enough, I live on the south coast of England. I work for myself. In fact, I run a small compliance business and I'm surrounded by really good family and friends that help me to understand what it is that I'm going through and how to better manage that. So here we go. I'll read the question first that's been posed, and then I'll give my response. So here's the first one. Please tell us about your experience with chronic illness. So here we go. I was 40. I was fit, healthy, active. And at that point, my children were young adults and just enjoying time with them. It was busy. It was a busy period. I was working at that particular point for a building contractor on the south coast. I was running the contracts department for them, and life was busy. Life was good. And then, over a period of time, I noticed some vision issues, some blurring in my left eye, and what can only be described as floaters. So there's bits of light that are just darting in and around in daylight and at night. So I thought I'll get it checked out, because I did the normal thing being a man, and that is I went to Dr. Google, and Dr. Google suggested that it might be a detached retina. Went to the opticians, and the opticians had a little look, and as they do their examinations, and it turned out to be something other than what Dr. Google may have suggested. The opticians at that particular point said you need to go to the local eye hospital without delay. I thought that's a bit weird. So off I went, and then the local eye hospital had a little look and said you need to go downstairs to see the neurologist. And you think, hang on a minute, neurologist, I've just come in here because I got a bit of blurred vision on it, that's all. So after that and much testing, I got a diagnosis of clinically isolated syndrome. What that means is that there's just one area of the brain that's been affected by potentially multiple sclerosis, and that was the swelling of my optic nerve on the back of my left eye. And that if there was only ever one episode, then it will just be diagnosed as clinically isolated and not evolve. But as time went on, that wasn't quite the case. There were more symptoms. So then there was weakness in my leg, some speech, and some other stuff that was going on. A light touch, as it were. After a period of time, much more examinations, then the diagnosis was given. It was multiple sclerosis. So MS it's quite unpredictable. At one point, you're absolutely fine, and the next, your legs aren't quite working as you expect, or your energy for what you would normally do, what you used to do, will be absolutely gone, be zapped. It'll be failing quite quickly. So your brain and spinal cord wiring is short-circuiting. And that's quite difficult to understand, and it's quite alarming because you just not developed tools for that. It's novel, it's all new. So managing it becomes somewhat of anxiety making. So from there, it took a bit of time to adjust to that diagnosis. As I've said before, it's, you know, that it didn't really affect me greatly. I just called it a light touch. It was a light dusting. So at that period, I thought, okay, I need to take a little bit of control of this and my own health. So I started cycling, and I did a bit of running, and I did swimming, and I did a short sprint triathlon to lose a bit of weight and just to be more active and take more control in my life. Didn't like running, couldn't see the point in that. Swimming was good. So, but the cycling was really good. And the cycling became, I think, a distraction. It was something that I could then not face the reality of what might be coming for me. I'd bury myself in the cycling and then just be blind to anything else. So the cycling was really good because it enabled me to meet new people, different experiences. And then I also went abroad and I raced my bike. So I'm in my early 50s now and I'm racing my bike. I raced it up mountains like Alpe d'Huez. I competed in the amateur UCI World Grand Fondos finals wearing Team GB kit for an amateur. So those rides, that means of pushing myself, that means of putting myself in pain, meant I'm still here, I'm still moving, I'm still doing this. How can I have MS when actually I'm still racing the mountains and the roads in the UK and Europe? I convinced myself that I had imposter syndrome. How could it be? How could it be? And then that all changed because in April 2021, I was involved with quite a serious collision with a car on a roundabout. Car came from the left, my right of way, I'm on the roundabout, and the car drove straight through me. So that led to hospitalisation for 3 weeks, unconscious at the side of the road. I had a brain injury. I broke my pelvis in 3 places, broke some ribs and some other bruising and tissue damage. Laying in a hospital bed, speech disappearing because of the brain injury, gives you a little bit of time to focus on what really matters. Because at that point of my recovery, I was understanding that could have been over. I'd never have known that I'd lived. I'd have never have known that I had 2 children or my family around me. And that is quite striking. So from that moment, as I'm sat in my hospital bed, I'm deciding that I need to get back on the bike, absolutely determined to get back on the bike and as early as is possible. So before week 7, I'd already set up my turbo trainer back at home. So I'm only 3 weeks out of hospital, still on crutches. And I managed to climb up the back of the turbo trainer to get onto the saddle of the bike, just to make sure the memory was there that I could still turn the pedals. And I could. So a couple of minutes each day, turn to 5 minutes each day, turn to 10 minutes each day, turn to 15 minutes each day. Then on the 3-month anniversary of the crash, when the hospital said, in theory, if you fall off now and hit your head, you're unlikely to have a seizure. You're good to go. Brilliant. I got on the bike on the road, and my first ride was what I call the roundabout of doom. And that is where I had the accident. And I thought, if I challenge that roundabout now, that's the difficult thing done. That's finished with. And then I can just ride anywhere if I can manage this. So off I went. And guess what? I didn't fall off. I didn't get hit by a car. Brilliant. Really enjoyed it. And that just spurred me on for more. So after a few months, a friend of mine said, why don't we go to Tenerife? Why don't we just have a bit of cycling in the mountains in Tenerife to help my recovery, I guess, and just be a supportive friend. So I've said, absolutely. We're on a descent just outside of Los Cristianos, and it was a bright sunny day. And I noticed something very familiar that day, and that was in my right eye. My right eye was blurred and floaters in it as I'm going down a fast descent. So I backed out of that, managed to pull up at the bottom. My friend was waiting for me, and I said to him, I think I've got an issue with my right eye, with my vision, and that's generally brought about because of bright light and heat. It brings on symptoms of MS. So we went back to his place, went nice and steady, got back safely, and that was the start of the decline. That was the start when the light touch was moving more from a light touch and more to affecting my everyday. So again, that's another point in my life where you think, well, okay, I'll just take control of this. So you start reading around stuff. And there was a quote from Carl Jung that stuck with me. And that was, we are not what happens to us. We choose what we become. And then for me, that's, well, we just have to accept and try and do our best with whatever it is that we're faced with. So the next question that was asked was quite an interesting one, and it's, do you think there is a lack of awareness around MS and other chronic illnesses? So I can only talk for MS, but I'm going to assume that it's going to be the same for any other potentially illness that's hidden, that can't be seen. So yeah, my answer to that is yes. The thing with MS is you might look okay on the outside. There's nothing physically with me that's hanging off, or my face is not dropped, or so I might have a limp, I might stagger, I might bump into things. But if I meet someone for the first time, they don't understand potentially. I'm not portraying signs, rather, that I'm struggling from within. And when I say struggling within, my brain is sending or computating with the chemical processes, but those processes aren't jumping across the nerve synapses to get to the message where it needs to be. So then I end up with walking issues. I end up with bladder issues. I end up with vision issues. I end up with tremors, and the list goes on. It's stuff that we have to deal with on a daily basis, but it doesn't present in front of someone. It's just all hidden. And for me, and I guess it might be the same for other people with a chronic illness, is that we don't wear it like a badge. We don't want it to be seen, so we tend to hide it. So I have to be really careful how I walk. The stuff that we did when we were younger in our youth without a chronic illness that affects the nervous system, and that will affect anything that the body does, you just take it for granted. So walking, running, cycling, all of those things was taken for granted. Now it's not. Now I have to think about where I go, what I do, who I tell, especially at work, when I'm out for clients, because if I have a problem on site, I might need some assistance to, I don't know, come down a staircase off a roof, for instance. So I'm quite selective on where I go now, and I try not to take things for granted. Speed is my friend on my bike. So when I ride slowly, that becomes a potential problem because I don't have balance that well. And also the signals don't quite get to my feet to unclip from the pedals. So quite often I'm just fall sideways to the hilarity of my mates, but they're very good because they do help me up. Just on the point about, we as men, we hide it. I think that's our own pressures and societal pressures. We just keep it in. We don't complain generally because that, I think, we might perceive as weakness. So that silence, that non-complaining is dangerous, I think. We need to talk about it, not just the physical aspects of what's going on, but the mental toll too. The mental toll is probably greater than the physical toll, so that every day it's a repeat, what's coming, and it's that every day to tell yourself, make the best of the day. Don't catastrophize, just try and do the best with whatever is left. And that's difficult. So pretending that it's all fine, it just doesn't work. We have to learn to step from the shadows of the darkness of that denial into the light of acceptance. That is so important. Only then are we able to truly understand what it is that we're experiencing, both mentally and physically. And only if we can see what it is that we are facing, can we then develop and choose those strategies to help us manage those daily tasks and daily pressures. Next question. What has made you feel passionate enough to reach out and talk to us? That's a really good question. This light dusting, this light touch that I spoke about earlier, you convince yourself that there's nothing wrong, and you convince yourself that it is, talking about it is weakness. It's weakness is what it is perceived. I realised through my journey that it's not weakness, it's a strength to talk about this stuff. It helps me manage, it helps me process what's going on. It helps me deal with that daily challenges. And it's also, I've developed this altruistic thing now, and that is that if it can just help one person, whether that's chronic illness or anything else that they're facing in the way of daily challenges, then that has to be good. So I'm sharing my story for that reason. And it's not just on this, I also share it on other forums as well, multiple sclerosis forums and some other social media, just to try and help people understand that they're not alone necessarily in terms of support. They're absolutely alone going through the illness or whatever it is. No one is sharing this illness with me. In terms of my friends and families, it's unique to me, but what they do share is those experiences that I portray to them, that I tell them that's going on, and how that's affecting me and what they can potentially do to support me in that. And if we don't do that, then again, they're blind, they're in the dark, they can't help, they feel helpless, and sometimes they feel challenged by that. So I think it's only right that we share our stories to help ourselves and to help others. You know, human beings are not machines. We break down. You can't get a spanner and fix it with a spanner, but we can be repaired with the support of our family, friends, organisations like Lighthouse and our healthcare system. We can live a fulfilling life. It might not be the one that we had, and then we have to adapt, not to mourn the loss of that, but to embrace the new. And that's why I share this story. So, final question for my ramblings: what message would you have for anyone else struggling with a chronic illness, and what advice would you give them? Another good question. It's not weak to speak. It's really not. You're not broken. As I've said before, you're human. You're human. Humans fail, both physically and mentally. That's part of life's journey. But we don't have to go through those challenges alone. We can talk to people, a friend, a partner, even a stranger. Just smile to a stranger, that reflects back, and that's enough sometimes to lift. Or a health professional. So to help me with that shadow of denial, I opted for the NHS talking therapy, and that was an absolute game changer. Because what they helped me with was specific advice. They explained to me what my brain was doing in terms of that denial, not in terms of the MS, but in terms of how I was approaching it. Well, my attitude to denying, burying myself in other things like the cycling, the swimming, work, and ignoring the other important factors. So they showed me, they explained to me, ACT. So this is the acceptance and commitment therapy. So and the acceptance is the acceptance of the condition. It's not going anywhere. I can't put it in a bag and then pack it off behind me. So I have to accept that I have MS. It doesn't mean I have to battle with it. It doesn't mean I have to struggle with it. I just have to accept that I have this chronic illness that may or may not develop further and decline further and cause more health issues. And then I have to commit, take those positive steps to better manage. So, you know, if we deny something, if we can't see it, it doesn't exist. It's quite simple. It does not exist. And if it doesn't exist, how can we manage it? How can we deal with it? So maybe find something that gives you purpose and not a distraction. For me, it's still cycling. Different than what it used to be. But I'm still out. I'm still with friends who laugh at me quite a lot. And I'm in nature. I still got the sights. I've still got the sounds. I've still got the smells. Still got the car drivers trying to kill me. So I do a bit of gravel nowadays. So I value that. I value that daily now. And the other thing about that is that, as I touched on before, is that I don't mourn the loss of my former self. It's just an ideology. That's history. I embrace those opportunities that are ahead of me with what I'm faced daily. And in fact, a few weeks ago, I went to the Alps. I went back to the Alps. I raced up Alpe d'Huez in 2019 on a road bike. And I thought to myself, I'd really like to get to the top of Alpe d'Huez on a road bike. So I took a Brompton electric with me and I rode to the top of Alpe d'Huez on a Brompton electric. And when I crossed the finish line, I broke down and I was just sobbing on the side of the road. The emotion that brought of that and the emotion wasn't sadness. The emotion was about realization that if I think differently, if I act differently, I can still do all of these things that I used to do. I just have to do them differently. And that again was another one of those enlightening moments. And I guess it made me realize it's not over. It's not over. So then I also come up with this sort of equation, really. And that the equation is that if my mental health is equal to or stronger than my physical health, I can do anything. So I work really hard at ensuring my mental health is in a good place by taking positive steps and talking about issues that I'm faced with, accepting those issues and committing to a strategy and practice of managing those issues. So I guess closing remark, when we start talking openly about what we're going through, it doesn't just help us. It really doesn't. It helps everyone around us. It builds a culture where it's okay to ask for help. And it makes us all absolutely stronger. So keep going. One moment of each day at a time. Thanks for inviting me into this, and thanks for listening to my story.